Okay, here we go. Welcome. This is session number 97. We are in chapter 13 called The Guiltless World, and this is section IV, 4. It's called The Function of Time. So, session 97 of Kevin Reads A Course in Miracles. So this is very interesting when Jesus starts talking about time. Right? Because as many great teachers will tell you, the only time is now. Right? And since we're talking about guilt in this chapter, he's going to show us how the ego uses time. When we believe we're separated from our source, when we believe we're separated from God, as Jesus says, the carpet of time rolls out. Right, so, past, present, and future. And you'll see that the past always is where the guilt is. You did something. And the future is the fear, right? So you got the sin and the guilt and the fear, right? And the ego likes to bring the guilt with it always, okay? So let's just begin. And you'll see how the ego insists on seeing everything from the viewpoint of the past. Okay. The function of time. And now the reason why you are afraid of this course should be apparent. For this is a course on love, because it is about you. You have been told that your function in this world is healing, and your function in heaven is creating. The ego teaches that your function on earth is destruction, and you have no function at all in heaven. It would thus destroy you here and bury you here, leaving you no inheritance except the dust out of which it thinks you were made. As long as it is reasonably satisfied with you, as its reasoning goes, it offers you oblivion. When it becomes overtly savage, it offers you hell. Okay. And that's the ego for you. All right. So that's why, it should be apparent to you what we've been talking about is you're afraid of this course, right? Because it's bringing you toward love, which is what you are. Okay? And that's what we're afraid of. You have been told that your function in the world is healing. And in time, in the world, our function is healing, and that is healing the split mind. Healing the mind that believed it could be separated from its source. And, of course, your function in heaven is creating. You create like your creator. Right? You extend love. You extend the oneness. You extend everything. The ego teaches that your function on earth is destruction. And this destruction is separation. Right? We separate. We keep ourselves separate, right? We judge whatever we think is the other, right? And then we project guilt onto it. We destroy it that way. Right? So that's what the ego tells you. That's your function here on earth, is to keep getting rid of that guilt, keep projecting it onto people and things and yourself. Okay? So the ego would thus destroy you here and bury you here. Right? Now remember, when he's saying you, he's talking to the decision-making part of your mind. Right? The ego would destroy you and bury you right here in its own thought system of sin, guilt, and fear. All right? So it would have you never go to your mind. It would keep you out of your mind, so to speak. Right? And it's leaving you no inheritance except the dust out of which it thinks you were made, which is a little reference to the ritual that says, "Dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return." Okay. When Jesus says you're much more than that. Okay, you are the offspring of the original source. Okay. So as long as it's reasonably be satisfied with you, it, as its reasoning goes, the ego that is, it offers you oblivion. When it becomes overtly savage, it offers you hell. So you have, two different ways to go with the ego. If the ego is content, happy with your progress and never going to your mind, never questioning it or anything, it just offers you at the end, you wonder, what's this all about? What is it? What's it all about? And other than that, if it gets annoyed at you, if you're searching, so to speak, if you're going to your mind looking for your inner guide, it starts to get outraged and it starts throwing up horror shows for you. All righty then, let's go to paragraph 2. Yet neither oblivion nor hell is unacceptable to you as heaven. It's not as unacceptable as heaven. All right, oblivion and hell, oh, it's okay. Heaven, whoa, I'm scared. All right, that's unacceptable. That intangible spirit, that abstractness, that oneness, that becomes frightening and therefore unacceptable. Okay? So, yet neither oblivion nor hell is as unacceptable to you as heaven. Your definition of heaven is hell and oblivion. And the real heaven is the greatest threat you think you could experience. For hell and heaven are ideas that you made up. And you are bent on demonstrating their reality to establish yours. If their reality is questioned, you believe that yours is. For you believe that attack is your reality, and that your destruction is the final proof that you were right. All right? That's a bit nutty, but that's the ego's logic. Okay? He says, you don't question this, right? Neither oblivion or hell, they're both okay, as long as you don't talk about heaven and love and who you truly are, right? Because heaven and hell, they're ideas that we made up in this ego thought system. They fit in very nicely into the ego's drama. Okay? And he says, you're bent on demonstrating their reality. And why would we do that? In order to establish our own reality. Right? So we are bent on establishing the reality of hell and suffering and oblivion. Right? But bent on proving that that's right, so that we thereby prove that everything we thought was right. Right? We did separate. I mean, seriously, in this 21st century, if you don't do this, all right? You don't poke people, okay? But you were to see, if even in conversation, if you were to say something like, well, really, the whole concept of hell is made up, right? You would get incredibly fierce reactions from some people, to the point where some of them would want to drive you out of the room. What are you talking about? There's no hell. Because their concepts, their ego concepts are automatically threatened. And they're more able to accept that. They're more able to accept the fact that there is a place where you can be tossed and suffer eternally for something you did. All right? So you better straighten up. They're able to accept that concept, and yet you're crazy if you were to suggest to them that you are the essence of love. You are a thought in the mind of God. You are the offspring of God. Right? You are the light of the world. Right? They would drive you out of the room if you're lucky. So it's easily acceptable, hell and all that, oblivion. And yet, who you truly are is frightening to the point where they could kill the messenger, which they did with Jesus. They did with Socrates. And a lot of other people who were saying the same things were like driven from the community, branded as crazy people. Because it's easier for the ego to accept its own belief system. And then it proves that you're here, you separated from your source. It's just one big nutty proof. Right? And you believe that your destruction is the final proof that you were right. So the fact that you die, your body dies, right, is the proof that you were right. You were part of this ego thought system. You separated from God. Paragraph 3, under the circumstances, would it not be more desirable to have been wrong, even apart from the fact that you were wrong? While it could perhaps be argued that death suggests there was life, no one would claim that it proves there is life. Even the past life that death might indicate could only have been futile if it must come to this, and needs this to prove that it was at all. You question heaven, but you do not question this. Yet you could heal and be healed if you did question it. And even though you know not heaven, might it not be more desirable than death? Right? Maybe your true self would be more desirable than this ego self, which is destined to just die, to live out its life and go poof. All right? Says, isn't the truth, wouldn't that be more acceptable? Because the truth is that you are eternal spirit. You are the eternal thought of love in the mind of God. So he says, given all these circumstances here, this, the inevitability of the breakdown of the body, the death, just to prove that you lived, that's crazy. He says, under the circumstances, would it not be more desirable to have been wrong? I mean, that's like a very subtle statement to me, but it's very powerful. Under these circumstances in which we live, which we believe we're living, would it not be more desirable to have been wrong? Wouldn't it be more desirable to be, oh yeah, I was wrong. I didn't separate from God. Right? I didn't do it. What a relief. I'm free from this ego thought system. He says, wouldn't it be more desirable to have been wrong? Apart from the fact that you were wrong. He says, you know, we'll talk about that later, but you were wrong. Right? You didn't separate. All righty then. So, you know, death is always the ego's big thing. All right? And the past. Right? He says you question heaven, right? But you never question the ego's thought system. He says, and yet you could be healed. You could heal and be healed if you did question the ego's thought system. Right? Even though you know not heaven, might it not be more desirable than death? You have been as selective in your questioning as in your perception. An open mind is more honest than this. Right? He's asking us to open our minds, or first of all, to realize you have a mind, and then go there and question everything. All right? Don't be selective in your questioning. You get to the point where you question every one of your beliefs. So you can get to the point where you realize, oh, I am in the here and now. I never separated from my source. And at that point, you are healed, and you have the ability to heal because you bring that with you as long as you're still in form. You're bringing that with you. All right, let's look at paragraph 4. He says, the ego has a strange notion of time. It is with this notion that your questioning might well begin. The ego invests heavily in the past, and in the end believes that the past is the only aspect of time that is meaningful. Remember that its emphasis on guilt enables it to ensure its continuity by making the future like the past, and thus avoiding the present. By the notion of paying for the past in the future, the past becomes the determiner of the future, making them continuous without an intervening present. For the ego regards the present only as a brief transition to the future, in which it brings the past to the future by interpreting the present in past terms. So it's interpreting the present moment in past terms. You're separated from God. You're separated in the past, and you still haven't changed. So it just glosses over the present moment in which you are not separated from God. But it sloughs over that just to get to the future. Right? And the future is already shaped because you're guilty. You did something in the past. Right? God knows when, but you're doing it again, as Dylan would say. You did something in the past and it shapes the future. Right? Now that's on the, that deep metaphysical level, but you could see it even on the physical level. Right? Many of us dwell in the past. We drag our history with us. Right? Look what my parents did to me. I'm this way because of them. Right? And so my future is shaped because of my past. Okay. I mean, that's fine if that's the way you live. Right? Everybody's got their path, you know. But what Jesus is saying here is that the ego thought system relies heavily on the past so that the future will be the same. Alrighty then. So the past becomes the determiner of the future. Right? And they avoid the present altogether. Because in the present is the holy instant. In the present is that instant in which you are joined with God and you never left. You are, in the present, you are that expansive consciousness. You are just expansive. Okay. You are that, as Gangaji would say. All right. You are that in the present. But the ego wants to slide over the present. Okay. So, paragraph 5, in italics, now has no meaning to the ego. The present merely reminds it of past hurts, and it reacts to the present as if it were the past. The ego cannot tolerate release from the past. And although the past is over, the ego tries to preserve its image by responding as if it were present. It dictates your reactions to those you meet in the present from a past reference point, obscuring their present reality. In effect, if you follow the ego's dictates, you will react to your brother as though he were someone else, and this will surely prevent you from recognizing him as he is. And you will receive messages from him out of your own past, because by making it real in the present, you are forbidding yourself to let it go. You thus deny yourself the message of release that every brother offers you now. Okay? Once again, Jesus brings it to seeing the glory, seeing the innocence in the other, right? Being willing to be shown, let me put it that way, right? Because we don't want to go around making it up. We just want to be willing to see the innocence. I'm willing to have my perception changed. Okay? And he says that's the message of release that every brother offers you right now, in the present moment. Okay? But now has no meaning to the ego. Right? The present just keeps reminding the ego of its past hurts. Look what happened to me. Right? Look what you did. Look what they did. This is why I am the way I am. Right? I can't have relationships because of somebody. Right? Just plug in, fill in the blank, as they say. Right? And the ego can't tolerate release from the past. If we released ourselves from the past, the ego would be gone. Right? On that metaphysical level, the past is where we think we separated from God. if we let go of that, it's all gone. The ego doesn't want that. The ego doesn't want you to go to your mind. It doesn't want anything to do with the present moment where that memory is, that memory of who you truly are. And the ego can't tolerate release from the past. Right? The ego tries to preserve its image by responding as if it were present. Right? I'm still being slapped around by that person. I'm still being slighted by that person. I'm still being abandoned. Right? That's on this physical level, right? Which proves that we are, victims, the innocent victims of, and someone else is guilty of something. And the ego tries to preserve its image like that. And the ego dictates your reactions to those you meet in the present from a past reference point. Right? So the people we meet, we start, referring to them from a past reference point. Oh, wow. Oh, I remember. I got to take it easy. Got to be careful. This person did this to me, right? This man did this to me. This woman did this to me. I can't trust them. Some people say can't trust women, can't trust men because of what they did, right? So we're looking at each experience through the lens of the past, okay? This way ensuring that the past remains alive. And in this present moment, when we do that, we obscure what is standing right in front of us, which is an opportunity to be released from the ego, right? Which is an opportunity to be released from that process of noticing an other, judging it, and then projecting the guilt onto it. Right? In the very moment our release is presented to us, all we need to do is be willing to see the innocence. I'm willing to see this other in their non-separated state. I'm willing to have that perception. Right? They may be walking around acting like a nut, okay, whatever they do, whatever song and dance, whatever sidewalk act they got going on, whatever disguise they've assumed, right? Whatever character they've assumed in the play. Right? We ask, help me to see past that, to the original innocence. And in doing so, I become aware of my own. Right? That's what's presented to us every moment in the now. Right? This is why we need to question our perceptions of people, because the ego thought system just would automatically put this person or this thing or this event, this occurrence, they put it into a cubbyhole that says, oh, this is what happens. Because remember that, right? It's happening again. Right? The past is repeating itself. You get that saying just popped up in my head. The past is prologue. Right? The past is going to tell you what's going to happen in the story. Right? Doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be that. If we could start questioning our beliefs, start questioning that ego thought system. Right? Because he says it obscures, when we see people through the past, the lens of the past, it obscures who they really are. It obscures their present reality. And in effect, if you follow the ego's dictates, you will react to your brother as though he were someone else. Right? And this will surely prevent you from recognizing him as he is. Right? And you'll receive messages out of your own past, because by making it real in the present, you are forbidding yourself to let it go. And thus, you thus deny yourself the message of release that every brother offers you now. All right? So unless we're questioning our perceptions, unless we're willing to see differently, help me to see correctly, he says you're just going to be getting those old echoes from the past. You're just going to receive messages from your past, right, in which there is guilt. And he says, and you're going to deny yourself the message of release that every brother offers you right now. Paragraph 6. The shadowy figures from the past are precisely what you must escape. They are not real, and they have no hold over you unless you bring them with you. They carry the spots of pain in your mind, directing you to attack in the present in retaliation for a past that is no more. And this decision is one of future pain. Unless you learn that past pain is an illusion, you are choosing a future of illusions and losing the many opportunities you could find for the release in the present. The ego would preserve your nightmares and prevent you from awakening and understanding that they are past. So the shadowy figures from the past are precisely what you must escape. They are not real and have no hold over you unless you bring them with you. Right? So it's our decision, really. Right? And if we don't question things, like even if I had a brutal past, right? No one is diminishing what happened to anyone, believe me. People are unkind and brutal and very cruel to one another. No one is denying that. But we can ask for help in seeing that. Help me to see that with corrected perception. Help me to see that. I'm tired of the rage that wells up in me every time I think of that instance in the past, or those instances that kept repeating themselves. Every time I encounter that memory, I'm in a rage. And I don't want that. It comes a time when you will say, I don't want that anymore. And you don't do it by yourself. You say, help me to see correctly. Help me to see correctly. And remember that Jesus will tell us in the Course, when you make that request, help me to see this correctly. It says, you will be answered in a language that you understand. Right? Something in your life, because that's what we understand at this point. So I might get an idea, or a friend that I trust might suggest to me, Kevin, in order to deal with that, why don't you go to a therapist, a talk therapist? Have someone help you with this. Have someone who's trained in things like this. Right? That could be an answer. Right? We're not poo-pooing anything here. You get what you need. You get as much as you can take in, right? Because you can't, most of us can't take in the power of the mind that just says, oh, okay, I'm thinking about that abusive relationship I was in, and all the humiliation, right? And all the fear, and all the naivete, all those judgments I had. I'm looking at that, right? Maybe there's someone who could help me, help me to see that correctly. Chances are, well, you might not be able to just all of a sudden have a transformative experience. That is quite possible, right? But if it's not, if it's too frightening for you to all of a sudden have this aha moment where you can release the perpetrators and see them for the condition they're in and appreciate their condition, right? And have compassion and understanding, or it might be a good idea to go to therapy. Who knows? Right? Just like if you have I keep getting these headaches, and you have a good friend of you that says, why don't you take a couple of aspirin? Just take an Advil or a Tylenol. Oh, maybe I'll do that. And it helps. It helps. Because we're a little bit afraid of the power of our mind. Because we could end this all. We could end all suffering. Because the mind is that powerful. Just by saying, no, I don't want this ego thought system anymore. Help me to see what's going on. But as he says in this chapter, and again in the beginning of this section, we're afraid of that because we think we're going to go poof, disappear, or else be destroyed somehow. Okay, and so the ego keeps bringing the past, sliding it right over the present. Right? Okay. And the shadowy figures from the past are precisely what you must escape, whether they're in form or the shadowy figure of the belief in separation. Right? That's what we have to escape. They're not real and they have no hold over you unless you bring them with you. Right? They carry the spots of pain in your mind, directing you to attack in the present in retaliation for a past that is no more. Right? And this decision is one of future pain. Right? So if our decision is to continually attack, we're guarantee ourselves future pain. All right. So the ego would preserve your nightmares and prevent you from awakening and understanding that they are past. I said, would you recognize a holy encounter if you are merely perceiving it as a meeting with your own past? Right. This is in paragraph 6, sentence 7. Sometimes I get mixed up with the paragraphs. I have so many lines written on things. Can't see where one paragraph ends and the other begins. But this is the middle of paragraph 6. And he says, would you recognize a holy encounter? Would you recognize the other? All right. I heard a lecture by Ram Dass the other day where he's explaining the word namaste, right? Which is that part of me that is, I'm going to paraphrase it and put it in coarse terms, that part of me that remembers who I am recognizes the part of you that knows who you are and realizes that we are the same. Right? So that's like a holy encounter. Namaste. I realize that you and I are one. You and I are part of the oneness. And we honor that. Right? He says, would you recognize that? Would you recognize a holy encounter? If you're perceiving it as a meeting with your own past? So would you recognize the holiness of the other? If you're just seeing it through the lens of the thought of separation. I'm guilty of something, I got to get rid of the guilt. Oh, it's him. So you don't recognize who they are. So it's a meeting with your own past. For you would be meeting no one, and the sharing of salvation, which makes the encounter holy, would be excluded from your sight. The Holy Spirit teaches you that you always meet yourself. Think about that. The Holy Spirit teaches you that you always meet yourself. And this encounter is holy because you are. The ego teaches you that you always encounter your past. The ego always teaches you that you're encountering sin. You're encountering your past, the thought of separation. The ego teaches you that you always encounter your sin, your past. And because your dreams were not holy, the future cannot be. And the present is without meaning. So you always encounter your past. Right? And because you're guilty of something, your future is going to be the same way. And it's going to be very fearful. Because sooner or later you're going to have to pay. Right? Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Right? And the present is without meaning. That's what the ego speaks of. Present is without meaning. On the other hand, the Holy Spirit teaches us that you meet yourself. All right? That's the full-on namaste. It's wonderful. Paragraph 7. It is evident that the Holy Spirit's perception of time is the exact opposite of the ego's. The reason is equally clear, for they perceive the goal of time as diametrically opposed. The Holy Spirit interprets time's purpose as rendering the need for time unnecessary. He regards the function of time as temporary, serving only his teaching function, which is temporary by definition. His emphasis is therefore on the only aspect of time that can extend to the future. For now is the closest approximation of eternity that this world offers. It is the reality of now. It is in the reality of now, without past or future, that the beginning of the appreciation of eternity lies. For only now is here, and only now presents the opportunities for the holy encounters in which salvation can be found. Only in the present moment do we find the opportunities for the holy encounters, the encountering of the self in the other. The opportunity to say, help me to see this person correctly. Right? It only happens in the present moment. For only now is here, and only now presents the opportunities for the holy encounters in which salvation can be found. We find our own salvation. We find our own freedom from the ego thought system in the present moment. Who is standing in front of me? Or even who am I thinking of? I don't need to have somebody standing in front of me. I have an image of somebody and I'm angry at them. I'm projecting guilt onto them. I firmly believe that if I was locked in a cave, I would simply hallucinate people to be pissed off at. Okay. So in each moment is the opportunity for salvation, which is the release from the ego thought system. Okay. In the now. So the ego, on the other hand, regards the function of time. Oh wait, let's talk about the function of time quickly. Like he says, the Holy Spirit interprets time's purpose as rendering the need for time unnecessary. All right, so time becomes like a classroom. And when we have learned, right, that it's a dream, it's an illusion, it's all made up, right, time is allowed to end, it's allowed to disappear. It becomes unnecessary. Right? We have passed the test, we've graduated. All right? So life can be a classroom. And while we're in that classroom, there's time. Time is useful. Right? And it's useful only insofar as we get to the point where it renders itself unnecessary. You don't need it anymore. It's like a good teacher. The teacher is good, and he knows that sooner or later you do not need the teacher anymore. That's the mark of a good teacher. Good teacher doesn't need dependent students. Good teacher will give you everything they have. And they'll marvel at your progress. Right? They'll be grateful for your progress. They'll rejoice along with you. And that's what time. He regards the function of time as temporary, serving only as his teaching function. Right? And his teaching function is temporary, pardon the pun, by definition. So his emphasis is therefore on the only aspect of time that can extend to the infinite, and that is now. Right? The now can extend into the infinite, and it's the closest approximation of eternity that this world offers. Right? Which is why the very popular teacher Eckhart Tolle I think his most famous book is The Power of Now. Right? He'll refer to the present moment as a portal into that vast expanse. Okay? Which contains the memory of who you are. Right? And the ego, on the other hand, paragraph 8, regards the function of time as one of extending itself in place of eternity. For like the Holy Spirit, the ego interprets the goal of time as its own. The continuity of the past and future under its direction is the only purpose the ego perceives in time. And it closes over the present so that no gap in its own continuity can occur. Its continuity, then, would keep you in time, while the Holy Spirit would release you from it. It is his interpretation of the means of salvation that you must learn to accept. if you would share his goal of salvation for you. So the ego just wants to continue sliding the past into the future. Right? And that's what keeps it alive. Right? Never stopping in the now to question anything. Is seeing everybody through the lens of the past. You know, all women are this, all men are that, all people from that country are this way, all people of that color are this way. And you just keep looking at things through the lens of the past. Right? And you're missing it. You're missing the opportunity to see the person. Right? We'll take a person as an example. To see the person for who they truly are, which is a thought in the mind of God, an innocent spirit, right? The same as you, not separate from you. Right? But the ego doesn't want you to get to that point. All right? Just for its own continuity, it wants to keep you in time. So, paragraph 9. You too will interpret the function of time as you interpret yours. You will interpret the function of time as you interpret your function. Is your function healing or separation? Right? Is it healing or destruction, chaos? Pardon me. You too will interpret the function of time as you interpret yours. If you accept your function in the world of time as one of healing, you will emphasize only the aspect of time in which healing occurs. Healing cannot be accomplished in the past. It must be accomplished in the present to release the future. This interpretation ties the future to the present and extends the present rather than the past. But if you interpret your function as destruction, you will lose sight of the present and hold on to the past to ensure a destructive future. And time will be as you interpret it. For of itself, it is nothing. So, I have notes all over the place, but this little note says here, forgiveness is the only thought that occurs in the present. Right? The ego tries to delay the now, tries to delay our realization of the present. And the forgiveness is that I stop projecting guilt. And I ask, help me to see this. I'm willing to see this correctly. I'm willing to see the innocence. I'm willing to see the glory and the holiness. And in that moment, I'm released from the ego. In that holy instant. So, in regard to time, right, remember the ego uses time in order to perpetuate its thought system of guilt and fear, right, and destruction. Right? And the Holy Spirit uses time, right, for healing. Right? We get enough time to question everything that we believe. Right? That's our function in time, is to heal, right? And to be healed. Because as we realize who we are, we bring that with us. And we light up every mind, even if we don't even encounter them. Okay? That's the healing. And that's the uses of time. That's the function of time. It's either for healing or destruction. And if you remember, well, somewhere along the line, Jesus goes, what is it for? He says, that's a good question in any situation. What is it for? Okay then. I thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. All right. And all right, we'll see you in the present also. All right then. Bye.